Hare Krishna. My name is currently Bhakta Brandon. That's subject to change, of course. I am from Florida, United States of America. Grew up a lot of my life in North Carolina, in Florida, the South, basically. How I came to Krishna consciousness is a progression. I'm still coming to Krishna consciousness, of course. But it all kind of began when I was a teenager. I used to play in rock bands most of my life. I'm a singer, guitar player, or at least at that time I was. And the first time I saw Lord Chaitanya, this band played at my house and they left these stickers of Equal Visions Records, which is started by a devotee. And it has Lord Chaitanya on it. I thought it was Buddha, of course, at the time. And from there, it took some years, but I was playing in a band, and I don't remember if it was the year that my band played or the year after this festival called the Warped Tour, which I now currently preach at. It's a punk rock festival, like a skateboarding festival. It started in the early 90s. And I got a book from a traveling monk, brahmachari, and all I remember him saying to me is about meditation, and he showed me the pictures, and I thought they were really far out. I felt like I had seen them before, and so I said, okay, sure, and I gave him some money, and he took the books. And so, and then I didn't read them, of course. I tried, and I was thinking, how am I gonna read? This is a different language. How am I going to read this? So I kind of put it on my shelf, but I never got rid of it. And then some years later, I kind of progressed into a more like progressive stage, like a more progressive music stage. I always kind of relate my life with music, I guess. So I got more into like jam music and 60s, 70s rock, and I understood the Beatles. They practiced meditation. George Harrison was very much into chanting Hare Krishna, and so I knew about that mantra. I didn't know much about it, but I knew what it was to a certain extent. And so, so basically I got to a point in my life where I started reading a lot of books, and I started practicing yoga. And I found myself at this point where I was living with a lady friend at the time. I was very confused. I dropped out of school at that point. I dropped out of college because I wasn't interested. I was trying to get a band together because all my bands had broken up, and that wasn't working out so well. I lost my job at one point. I wrecked my car. My girlfriend broke up with me, and so I didn't know what to do. I was kind of like, I just moved to St. Augustine, Florida, from where I was going to school in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then I was trying to figure out what to do, and then I called one of my friends, and she had just moved to Tallahassee. Her and my best friend, Taylor, they moved to Tallahassee, and they said I could sleep on their floor and live with them for a while. So I did that. I took my things, which wasn't very much, and I went to live on their floor for a while, which worked out for a little time, and then it started to get a little hectic. But in Tallahassee, I found that there was a very collective place I could practice different kinds of yogas. I would practice Kundalini yoga, Hatha yoga. I met this one individual who my friends had recommended me to go see. His name was Garuda. Many people might know him from his Rainbow Gathering preaching. He sets up a teepee and reads Krishna book to the Rainbow Wanderers. And I was one of them, you could say, in a sort. Free-ranging, free-spirited person. And so I went to he has a little preaching center there where he kind of teaches like a mantra to get us into Maha Mantra. But anyway, he taught me about Bhakti Yoga, and he was slowly bringing me to Krishna, and he took me to Alachua or New Raman Reti rather, for the Gaurapanim festival. And my best friend and I, we went with a small group of people. He had us all wearing white because he said it was the color of our soul or something like that. He was saying it's pure, it'll make you feel pure. So we all wore white. We didn't know much, but we went into the temple room and we sat down for a while, and then everyone was dancing, and next thing you know, we got swept up, and it was amazing. I remember seeing Prabhupada on the Vyasa, and I was thinking in my mind, oh, he looks familiar. I guess that's their guru. I didn't relate him as my guru yet. I remember thinking that, oh, that's their guru, is what I was thinking. Then I saw on the altar, it was like a bright light. I couldn't see the deities. I remember seeing just like, this was like effulgence. I don't remember seeing any archer vigrahas. It was just, it was effulgent, and I saw this gentleman wearing a turban. He looked very warrior-like, is what I was thinking, and I thought he was guarding the deities, which I can see the pujari is the caretaker and guardian of the deities. I can see that, but I thought he was like the guardian of the deities because he had the gates and everything. I was thinking, oh, he's protecting them. Anyway, so I went to a few Rath Yatras in the area. Florida is known for their Rath Yatras. I think there's more Rath Yatras in Florida than any state in the United States. Any state in the United States. I went to the St. Augustine Rath Yatra and also Tallahassee Rath Yatra, and I remember there was so many nice impressions there. The kirtan was amazing. The prasadam. Just the people in general, everyone I met, just so inspiring. And in Tallahassee, I'd also been going to the Krishna lunch they have there because I was vegetarian. I was trying to practice vegetarian. And anyway, some very drastic things were happening in my life. It was a very, very kind of intense time in my life where I was trying to find deeply what my path was, what my spiritual path was. And I'd been searching for a few years, maybe not so seriously, but at that point I got a little more serious about trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because I'd been reading books from many people, mostly Mayavadis, but they had talked about living in an ashram setting, and I knew from my practice in yoga that to really practice yoga you have to live in an ashram with very few belongings to really understand what yoga was and how to practice yoga. So that you have to learn from a teacher. So I understood I needed to find a guru. So I had been researching many gurus, read many books, and so there came I came to a crossroads basically where I had met this lady, and she was bad news. Everyone could tell me from just meeting her for a few minutes she was bad news, and for some reason I couldn't figure it out completely. But at some point I had walked into the woods and I had sat under a tree and I had begun to meditate on what to do, because I knew I needed to do something. And so a kind of voice came to me and said, live in the ashram, and this is your one chance. You're young, you're not tied down to anything. This is your one chance. You gotta live in an ashram. Because I didn't have a job, school, anything. I was just pretty much a very free-spirited hippie with not much money. So I had to figure out something to live, and also not only for my body but also my spirit, which I understood the spirit was the most important. So I wanted to live in a yoga ashram, so I called this Mayavadi yoga place. I'm not going to list it, but I called them up and I talked to a lady sannyasi, and she said, "Oh yeah, we'll try to get you here." It costed money though, so I didn't have any money, so I was thinking, how am I going to pay to get there? And so I talked to my mentor, my friend. His name, I said his name's Garuda. He's an initiated devotee, Garuda Das. So I talked to him, and he said you should live in New Vrindavan, because I talked to him about New Vrindavan. He had told me some stories about his life there. He had lived there at one point, and I was attracted to farming and living simple life. So I took his advice, and I went to the temple and I started talking to the devotees there, because he had a center and then there was a temple, so a little different. His different kind of outreach, I guess. I don't want to go into much detail, but So I went to the temple, and I talked to a friend that I had met, and he had some contacts in New Vrindavan. So a few days later, this Swami named Varshana Swami, he's a very dear disciple of Srila Prabhupada, he called me, and I talked with him for an hour about just basic things, basically what I wanted to do and what they had to offer, and a little bit about Krishna consciousness. It didn't seem like he didn't really preach to me too much. He just let me be, really. And so I was really attracted to that, because it seemed like all the religious movements in this world would just preach down your throat. But he was just letting me be who I was, and he was there to give me Krishna if I wanted it. And he was giving me Krishna the whole time, but not forcefully. So, and I wanted it to a certain extent, I guess, at the time. So I told him that I'd want to live there, so I got a hold of him. I moved from Tallahassee to New Vrindavan farm. I lived on the farm there. I didn't have much to drop, but I guess you could say I dropped everything, all my bad habits, and which I was already starting to drop anyway, like smoking, not cigarettes, wasn't into that. And drinking, I wasn't into that either. And illicit sex, I had begun to understand wasn't good for my yogic life. And meat eating, I was vegetarian. And gambling. I didn't gamble necessarily, but maybe a little bit in life. So I was willing to give them all up very easily. I moved into the community, and it took me a little time. I had long hair for a long time. I wanted to feel it out, but the devotees are so amazing there, and they let me be who I was. And then after I lived there for some time, I decided I wanted to try to pay off some debt. So I paid off some debt at my mother's house for a little while, and I got into a little maya, but I got out of it pretty quick, realizing I needed to take serious. So I moved to Gainesville, and the wonderful devotees there took me in, even though they were full. As most devotees know, that Gainesville is known for lots of prasadam distribution at the campus and lots of devotees, so that's exactly what it was. And sometime there I decided I wanted to shave my head after like a week or two. So I shaved my head, and I've been pretty blissful ever since then, shaving off the hippie seeds, as Prabhupada called them, hippie seeds. And then I decided I wanted to live as a brahmachari, so you can see. So I started traveling with a Rupanuga Veda College traveling Sankirtan party. And I've been doing that ever since. 2 years. So it was 3 years ago that I first began, but now 2 years full-time traveling. And so thank you for listening and watching how I feel about Krishna consciousness. That's right. How I feel about Krishna consciousness. Here in Mayapur Dham, I can see Krishna consciousness is ever expanding, right? So it's ever expanding. Well, we call this the journey of self-discovery. So I'm always discovering more about myself, and it's also ever expanding in the world. I can see as well, because I'm meeting people from China, from Pakistan. I met people from Pakistan last year, and Mauritius, Europe. So here we can see it's expanding. So it's expanding within and also around the world as well. I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me, at least. I don't know if I word it right, but basically, you know, Krishna consciousness is it's ever expanding. It's a never-ending journey. Even in the spiritual world, Krishna consciousness is ever fresh, as you could say. So, hope that's good. Hare Krishna.